Satya, it's such a privilege to be here with you.
Thank you so much for being here and having me on.
Well, thank you for making the time. And I want to start with just explaining where we are right now and how this really reflects what Microsoft is doing.
You know, we're on a treehouse, and I know it's your first time, but it's also my first time. But I think the last time you were here is when we were building it.
Yep.
And it's exciting to be in a place where right now even we're innovating on the workspace itself. I mean, just to ensure that all of our folks have the spaces they need and want and desire as they innovate.
I mean, it's impressive that you are refreshing your company at the same time you're refreshing your campus. Earnings just came out. You beat on not only top and bottom lines, but individual product lines as well. How are you juggling the priorities and keeping everything so successfully running?
I mean, first of all, I think our focus completely remains on two sets of things, which is the sense of purpose and mission, as well as our culture. When we say we want to empower every person in every organization on the planet to achieve more, fundamental to that mission is not celebrating any success we have. In other words, our success is aligned with the success of the world around us, whether it's making a small business more productive or a large multinational more competitive or a public sector institution more efficient. That's, in some sense, the key to any long-term success we are going to have. And to do that, it has to start with really this culture where we have to sort of take a posture every morning that we need to confront our fixed mindset. In other words, what has happened in the past is the past, and the question is, what were all the mistakes we made that we can learn from?
Right, and part of your culture and part of what you try to instill in your employees is to recognize any of those past mistakes, acknowledge them, and move past it. I have to give a big shout out to your entire team, they've just been amazing to show me just what you've been able to accomplish. And I can see it in every single person that I've talked to, that they are not only happy, but they feel like they're thriving and that they have a flexibility to do what they want, which, this week is the hackathon, you've got the garage. These are permanent fixtures inside of the company. Why is it so important for you to focus on giving employees the flexibility to reach outside of what they do on a daily basis?
One of the things that I've always felt is, what's the best way for us to think about the lived culture in a way that it really, instead of thinking of how you work at Microsoft, what if we could turn that equation and said, Microsoft works for me? In other words, each of us comes into the workplace with a passion, with a personal philosophy even in terms of what we want, in terms of the meaning in our lives. And if there is a way to relate that back to the platform, in this case, that Microsoft gives me and anyone else working at Microsoft, and that's whether it's the hackathon or even quote unquote your day job, right? I mean, if you're working at Microsoft, you will be able to somehow or the other connect whatever it is that you're working on and what this company does with one of these personal philosophies or passions. And that's, to me, the biggest unlock any corporation can do, and that's the pursuit we're on.
And how can other leaders learn from your leadership in this respect?
I think it's hard for us to sort of say, here is what others can learn. I think the best thing we can focus on is to say, okay, what are we learning? What are we learning about even the aspirations of the people inside of Microsoft? I mean, that's always going to change. Each time an intern class comes in, right now we have, 5,000 interns at Microsoft this summer. They all have different expectations, higher expectations of what we stand for, how diverse and inclusive is our culture, how we innovate. And so the question is, if we can meet those increasing expectations each year, each summer, then I think we will learn and others will do the same.
And it's so thoughtful. When I was walking around the hackathon, there were these small details, whether it was the prayer room or whether it was a separate quiet room for mothers. And I was also eavesdropping a bit on some of the conversations. Azure came up quite a bit, of course, that's the through line to your business. And I think at this point, people are still wondering, when is Microsoft going to break out Azure numbers, revenue? I mean, can you explain really what Azure is at its core?
Yeah, I mean, for us, Azure is a super important part of what we're doing. But when we think about what's happening here, whether it is Game Pass or xCloud, whether it's Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, LinkedIn, or Azure, it's really all one platform effect. I mean, first of all these application services are built on the same platform. And that's the same platform we make available to even third parties. So the reason why we think about this is really one unified sort of thesis of what is happening in terms of the technology stack, and we even allocate our capital, our operating expenses along those lines, right? We don't have a fragmented set of tech stacks. We have one tech stack in the cloud and the edge on top of which all these applications are getting built. And it's fantastic to see that. I mean, in fact, the last time we had such a coherent picture was in the mid-90s in the client-server era. And now in what is the cloud and the edge era, I feel fantastic that we have that cohesion.
Is it the right way to think about it maybe as Azure is sort of the tree and the platform is this tree house and you're building from Azure as the core trunk?
It is true. I mean, at the same time, when you sort of put yourself in customer shoes, interestingly enough, in fact, if anything, customers don't really care about any product line of ours. If you look at it, they really care about how are all of what we do, as well as other third-party services that they may be using on top of our platforms, how do they come together to help them innovate much faster? And the reality is, especially we've learned this the hard way, quite frankly. When you're thinking about commercial customers, small or large, you have to really not have the seams of our technology stacks. And in particular, in today's age, where data is everything, if all we do is create more data silos, they're not going to be able to really get the return on their investment. So therefore, I try to avoid, even culturally, that it's not about celebrating individual products and their success, because in some sense they're fairly meaningless, especially when viewed through the customer's eyes.
And that really goes back to your also philosophy of partnering with your customers rather than just selling into them and doing things for them. You're not just teaching them to fish, you're fishing along with them so that they can feel like they can grow as well, that they're not isolated and reliant maybe on just one or two companies to grow.
No, that's a very, very big part. I mean, the thing is, Microsoft was founded in 1975 with this thesis that, we're going to build developer tools. At that time, the market was hobbyists. But now in 2019, everybody's a software company, right? It doesn't matter. You can be in retail, in healthcare, in pharma, what have you. And so in fact, our core to our mission is to build digital capability, right? It's not them just using our technology. The question is, how is our technology helping them create their own digital technology? And that's leading to a very different approach. We don't even think of these as customers who use our products. These are partners we are co-innovating with, all right? Whether it's Walgreens or Walmart, or an entrepreneur in South Africa that last week I met, and who is just creating this amazing backpack that's going to be used for diagnostics in rural areas. So any one of them, we're co-innovating with them.
You are partnering with almost every industry right now, and one of the biggest customers you're looking at is also the U.S. government. And earlier in the year, we'd heard reports that employees inside of Microsoft felt a little uncomfortable using, let's say, a HoloLens to, in their words, develop weapons. We know there's a big contract coming up, and reports are saying Azure and AWS are in the running. Is there anything that the government would ask of you that would make you feel uncomfortable and say, this is not a deal I want to sign?
I mean, first of all, we are very, very clear on two things. One is that we are absolutely going to partner and serve our government and its agencies, because after all, in our democracy, we've elected them to protect the freedoms we all as citizens enjoy. So that's sort of at the core. And the second thing is, we have a set of ethical principles, and so does our government. If anything, and the democratic process will ensure that those ethical principles are kept top of mind. So we really rely as both a corporate citizen as well as citizens in this country to be able to make sure that we never cross any line as a nation or as a company or as an individual.
Now, politically speaking, a lot of people feel the government has been reaching into areas like the private sector like never before, and some of that means limiting the way that businesses here in the U.S. deal with the outside world and companies from other countries. If the U.S. were to restrict even further sanctions or limitations on Chinese companies, does that impact Microsoft's business in any way?
I mean, we're a multinational company. We're at the same time American-based multinational company, so therefore we're subject to American laws and the laws of the United States. But that said, I think one of the things that we are very clear on is that we should not conflate too many things. There is trust in technology. which broadly needs to be there. And then there are trade issues that are political issues between countries that need to get resolved. In time, I think each country is going to obviously put their own country's interests first, and we recognize that when we operate in every country, whether it's in the US or in the UK, in China or in Japan. We as a multinational company are fundamentally responsible for ensuring that we are creating surplus in all those communities and countries. And so that's what we'll stay focused on, and we'll let this all play out.
I think what's fascinating is, when you joined Microsoft, it was sort of in the infancy of its growth into the size that it is today. It was almost like tech then was a one-size-fits-all, and now that these regulations are coming left and right from different parts of the world, each country has its own opinion on what regulation should look like and how every company should be treated. How do you manage and run a company when it seems to be like a broken mirror of these types of reflections of what you are doing?
I mean, first of all, I think as technology has become more important and more pervasive in our lives and in our sort of societies across all sectors, it's a given that there is going to be more scrutiny and a look at us as an industry, and we have to mature. If anything, as Microsoft, I sort of say always that, look, let's meet the real world needs of our customers and the countries and communities you serve in. And so therefore we can't just simplify the world just because it's convenient for us. The world will expect us to meet them where they are versus us sort of trying to sort of change that. And I'm okay with that. I think it's natural part of growth, both for us as a company and us as an industry.
So you're okay with regulation, you support it, and will it break anything ultimately?
I mean, always anything that is over-regulated could have its own unintended consequences. But at the same time, let's say, are there regulations that ensure consumer safety? Or environmental issues, and those are all good things. So I would say, let's just be okay and trust that the overall ability for regulators to come up with systems that protect the broader society is something that we should, not shy away from.
Azure's been a driving force for your business these last couple of years. AI seems to be the next thing, and you just announced a $1 billion investment into OpenAI, into this idea of artificial general intelligence. What don't we know yet about AI that maybe if we look back, 20 years from now, maybe we should have done something differently?
I think fundamentally I look at it and say it's clear that on a secular basis, we are going to have more and more capable AI. And the thing that's exciting to see in our case is these multimodal, unsupervised language models themselves and the kinds of breakthroughs they can create. Or, for example, you and I were talking even before on, wow, if somebody has dyslexia and they can start reading because we are able to bring together AI technology that spaces the words appropriately so that you can read. Or just with eye gaze technology, if someone with ALS can start communicating. These are pretty amazing breakthroughs where people who today are not perhaps fully participating in our economy are able to participate because of AI. But that at the same time also means that there are unintended consequences. So I always say, let's start with a set of ethical design principles, right, which we as creators of AI need to have. Take bias. One of the things is in a language model, if it trains on human language, it's going to pick up the inherent bias. So let's improve the state of the art of how do we de-bias a language model. So that's some of the work that we are doing. So I think as AI develops, let's not just celebrate what AI can do. We should also really ask ourselves, what should AI do, and have the tooling and the engineering process around it.
And to open it up for everybody to be able to participate in what that future looks like.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a way we can even think about AI as being more inclusive, right? Which is the human should always be in the loop. What that means in terms of being in the loop will change in definition. But we can absolutely design such that AI is helping us as human beings individually and humanity on its whole really get the next level of gains.
And speaking of the future, what about your future? I mean, the past 5 years have truly cemented your legacy here. Is there a plan for CEO number 4?
For now, I'm very, very focused on really, it's a real privilege, personally speaking, to have a chance to come in every day and work at a company like this and do what I get to do with all the people at this company and our partners and our customers. And as I said, the thing that perhaps gives me the most satisfaction, I've spent 27 years at Microsoft, is to see the sense of purpose and mission in action in every community I visit, and that's what gives me energy, and I'm here to work on that.
Well, it's been a privilege for me as well to be able to sit down with you today, Satya. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure.